So hit your Wayback Machine, and we're going to look at something called the Tavistock Institute. Now, see, in the wake of the Enlightenment, the notion arose at an intellectual elite people. A distinguished social stratum can be traced back to classical history. The elite classes of intellectuals as well-educated people emerged in most European countries. The intelligentsia, I'm reading something here, by the way, so it sounds like I'm reading a little bit. I am. Is a social class of people engaged in complex mental and creative labor directed at the development and dissemination of culture, encompassing intellectuals and social groups close to them, such as artists, mystics, psychologists, psychiatrists, scientists, and teachers. It is a forerunner of what we call today the psychedelic intelligentsia and today's New Age spiritual fusion. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit right now about there's going to be some spiritual things. As I've told you in the past, there's no way I can dig out all of this because I'm not trying to be a proselytizer. What I'm trying to do is share with you how these various groups think, and the only way to get into some of that thinking sometimes is to touch upon the spiritual or religious bent of some of these things as well. So as I read this, bear that in mind and dig out of it what's usable to you in your faith. I don't sit here and play proselytizer of faith. I don't like that, and I don't teach that. So please understand, as I share with you anything out of my faith or my understanding, and that some of these things that I share with you are just what I think, and you, again, can come to your own conclusion. But like time, I've always believed, and this is true, that societies, cycles of time, everything, they're all cyclical. They're always in a continuous process of constructing themselves and deconstructing from within. Utopian socialists are forerunners of communal hippie life. Intentional communities and cooperatives, utopian nostalgia is exemplified in the Star Trek and Star Wars philosophy. The dystopian reflection is The Matrix, the postmodern Brave New World. Now, quasi-socialist intellectuals created hypothetical visions of perfect, egalitarian, and communal societies without actually concerning themselves with the manner in which these societies would be sustained, yet they shared a dream. The Theosophical societies cover the origin and development of the cosmos and human development in all the planes of being, from its beginning to its end. It is a philosophy of process, transformation, and evolution towards an extraordinary human potential. And out of this utopian and scientific socialism came theosophy, the British Guild Socialism, the Fabian Society, Bertrand Russell, H.G. Wells, Tavistock, and the iconoclast, the dreaded Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley is an infamous occultist. Occultism has served as an alternative account of the world available to people dissatisfied with an orthodox view of things, scientifically and politically, since the late 18th century. Older than theosophy, with roots in Kabbalah, Hermetics, and pantheism, magic, with a CK at the end, was a practical application of causing change to conform with will, using very specific principles. They both embrace what's called the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, which reflects the identity of man as a microcosm. The cryptocracy, through economics and mass mind control, is involved in transformation or what's called alchemical processing of mass consciousness by psychological mind manipulation. With the help of these foundations and secret societies, experiments in world shaping continue through the multimedia and military campaigns. The goal is to seed and control megatrends so that the masses live as controlled puppets, what are called wage slaves, for the ruling elite. Occult societies have a long tradition of influence, peddling and providing covers for espionage. They are conduits of trust that transcend national borders and can cover a spy network. Naturally, occultists influence one another's beliefs, whether they were acknowledged or not. Black intelligence ops, also called esoterics, has been in a department in most intelligence services. In the M16, it was called the Occult Bureau. The SS also had an Occult Bureau. The Watch were FDR's super-secret team of occult countermeasures, arcane assimilations, paranormal and psychic investigation. After the war, The watch redirected its interest to UFO phenomenon. Now, it's very interesting because in my own life, I had a chance to encounter a couple of people who were involved with the federal government, the U.S. government, testing of psychic phenomena. Specifically, there was a man by the name of Uri Geller. The United States government at that point was testing Uri Geller's ability to, if you remember, he could bend spoons. You can probably find he's now kind of a pop culture phenomenon. He later came out and admitted that he was a fraud. But there was a belief that maybe he had these psychic abilities that they could be turned into a military usage. And though he was a fraud, there are other elements to this that went and looked into such things as astral projection, the ability to see from what's called remote seeing or remote scrying. But these all came out of that movement. Now, the two people that I had contact with were in the area of magic because in my background I was an illusionist magician. I was with the IBM, which is the International Brotherhood of Magicians, the PCAM, Pacific Coast Association of Magicians, Society of American Magicians. I'm honored. I'm a 25-year member of IBM, which makes you a what's called Order of Merlin, and just have a real good background in that. And these two guys who I knew were a guy by the name of Jerry Andrus and Professor Ray Hyman. Now, Jerry Andrus and Professor Ray Hyman were brought into this to go look at these various paranormal psychic things as a magician would view them, as a psychologist. Now, Ray Hyman's a psychiatrist, psychologist, and Jerry Andrus was a magician. Now, they brought these two people together along with several other people, and they went and looked at this thing. You might be familiar with the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. This was kind of what was going on during this period of time. Of course, that's a movie that's somewhat based upon some of this testing and so forth. It was happening in the military during that time. The esoteric unit. They were studying the teachings of Theosophy and of Blavatsky. They were studying the Kabbalah. They were studying all of this stuff, and they were trying to meld it into something they could conclusively use to influence people, kind of Manchurian candidate them. So they came up with things like Tavistock. And, this also came through, what's very interesting is if you look at the history of subliminal stimuli, which is kind of what came out of this, it's interesting to note some of the comparisons and groups that were involved. And I'm just going to go here to Wikipedia. I'm going to look at the history of subliminals, because subliminals are one of the ways in which you folks are being manipulated. This is one of the mind piracy things that are happening. The director of Yale Psychology Laboratory, E.W. Scripture, Ph.D., published The New Psychology in 1897, which described the basic principles of subliminal messages. In 1900, Knight Dunlop, an American professor of psychology, flashed an imperceptible shadow to subjects while showing them a Mueller-Lyer illusion containing two lines that pointed arrows on both ends, which created the illusion of different lengths. Some of you may have seen this. Dunlop claimed that the shadow influenced his subjects subliminally in their judgment of the lengths of the lines. Although these results were not verified in scientific study, American psychologist Harry Lee Hollingworth reported in an advertising textbook that such subliminal messages could be used by advertisers. During World War II, the hard word to read, Tavistock, an instrument which projects pictures for an extremely brief period, was used to train soldiers to recognize enemy warplanes. Today, this same unit is used to increase reading speed or to test sight. In 1957, market researcher James Vickery claimed that quickly flashing messages on a movie screen in Fort Lee, New Jersey, had influenced people to purchase more food and drinks. Vickery coined the term subliminal advertising and formed the Subliminal Projection Company based on his 6-week test. Vickery claimed that during the presentation of the movie Picnic, he used the same machine to project the words, "Drink Coca-Cola," and "Hungry? Eat popcorn," for 1/3000th of a second at 5-second intervals. Vickery asserted that during the test, sales of popcorn and Coke in that New Jersey theater increased 57.8% and 18.1%, respectively. However, in 1962, Vickery admitted to lying about the experiment and falsifying the results, the story itself being a marketing ploy. An identical experiment conducted by Dr. Henry Link showed no increase in cola or popcorn sales. A trip to Fort Lee, where the first experiment was alleged to have taken place, would have shown straight away that the small cinema there couldn't possibly have had 45,699 visitors through its doors in the space of 6 weeks. This thus led people to believe that Vickery actually did not conduct his experiment at all. However, before Vickery's confession, his claims were promoted by Vance Picker's book, The Hidden Persuaders, and led to a public outcry and to many what are called conspiracy theories, boy, we heard that term before here, of governments and cults using the technique to their advantage. The practice of subliminal advertising was subsequently banned in the United Kingdom and Australia, and by American networks and the National Association of Broadcasters in 1958. But in 1958, Vickery concluded a television test in which he flashed the message, "Telephone now," hundreds of times during a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation program and found no noticeable increase in telephone calls. In 1973, commercials in the United States and Canada for the game Husker Du flashed the message "Get It" during the same year. Wilson Bryan Key's book Subliminal Seduction claimed that subliminal techniques were widely used in advertising. Public concern was sufficient to cause the FCC to hold hearings in 1974, and the hearings resulted in an FCC policy statement stating that the subliminal advertising was contrary to the public interest and intended to be deceptive. Subliminal advertising was also banned in Canada following the broadcasting of the Husker Du ads there. The December 16, 1973 episode of Columbo, entitled Double Exposure, is based on subliminal messaging. It is used by the murderer, Dr. Bart Kepler, a motivational research specialist played by Robert Culp, to lure his victim out of his seat during the viewing of a promotional film, and by Lieutenant Columbo to bring Kepler back to the crime scene and incriminate him. Lieutenant Columbo has shown how subliminal cuts work in a scene mirroring James Vickery's experiment. In 1978, Wichita, Kansas TV station, KAKE-TV, received special permission from the police to place a subliminal message in a report on the BTK killer, bind, torture, kill. That's what BTK stands for, apparently, in an effort to get him to turn himself in. The subliminal message included the text, "Now call the chief," as well as a pair of glasses. The glasses were included because when the BTK murdered Nancy Fox, there was a pair of glasses lying upside down on her dresser. Police felt that seeing the glasses might stir up remorse in the killer. The attempt was unsuccessful, and the police reported no increased volume of calls afterward. A study conducted by the United States concluded that the cultural implications of subliminal indoctrination is a major threat to human rights throughout the world. Campaigners have suggested subliminal messages appear in music. In 1985, two young men, James Vance and Raymond Belknap, attempted suicide. At the time of the shootings, Belknap died instantly. Vance was severely injured and survived. Their families were convinced it was because of the British rock band Judas Priest. The families claimed subliminal messages told the listeners to do it in the song "Better by You, Better Than Me." The case was taken to court, and families sought more than $6 million in damages. The judge, Jerry Carr Whitehead, said the freedom of speech protections would not apply to subliminal messages. He said he was not convinced that hidden messages actually existed on the album, but left the argument to attorneys. The suit was eventually dismissed. In turn, he ruled it probably would not have been perceived without the power of suggestion, or the young man would not have done it unless he really intended to. In 1985, Dr. Joe Stussy testified at the United States Senate at the Parents Music Resource Center hearings that the message of a piece of heavy metal music may also be covert or subliminal. Sometimes sub-audible tracks are mixed in underneath other, louder tracks. These are held by the subconscious, but not the conscious mind. Sometimes the messages are audible, but are backwards, called backmasking. There are disagreements among experts regarding the effectiveness of subliminals, and we need more research on that. Folks, let me tell you, in the casino industry, they're well aware of the use of subliminals. Everything about the places is built know when you walk past a joint and you look at, that's what they call themselves, isn't that wonderful? And they look past this, at the front of these places, and you'll see machines sometimes right inside the door. Those are usually pretty good machines. Now, not so much that they'll make big payoffs. They're not really geared to make big payoffs. They're geared to make lots of payoffs. So the person still ends up putting the money back in. But the idea is it's a flow. Every once in a while, of course, there'll always be the big payoff, and they are generally some of the most played machines, so we've got to give it that as well. Inside, you'll find lots and lots of various messages around. If you walk around a casino, you'll see there's all sorts of messages and signs. But if you try to find the front door, you're going to have some problems because they're also geared to lose you inside of them. So that you get lost in among all these messages, and the front door isn't always as evident as it might be as you came in the door. Again, another rule among the casino industry is keep them in the house. It's this and other methodologies such as this that are used quite a bit to control you and I, to get us to think the way they want us to think. Who are they? Well, I guess I'll leave that up to you. A lot of people say it's the boogeyman or the NWO or whatever. However you want to see that boogeyman, I suppose. But there is a boogeyman. There are boogie people, and they want to boogie down on you. We'll take a quick break. We'll get back. We'll talk some more. Let's see, what will I play? Well, I go get something to drink here. Let me look through. Before we went to the break there, I was talking a little bit about the Tavistock Institute at one point, because this is one of the key things that things keep coming back to, sort of the linking point between theosophy, if you will, and mind control as it was applied to science. The Tavistock Institute was formed in 1947. It's an independent, not-for-profit organization which seeks to combine research in social sciences with professional practice. Problems of institution building and organization design and change are being tackled in all the sectors: government, industry, and commerce, health and welfare, education, etc., nationally and internationally, and clients range from multinationals to small community groups. It's still available. You can still see it on its website under the Tavistock Institute. It's located at 30 Tabernacle Street, London. It's an institute owns and edits the monthly journal Human Relations, published by Plumman Press, which is now in its 48th year, and has recently launched, in conjunction with Sage Publications, a new journal called Evaluation. Three elements combine to make the Institute unusual, if not unique. It has the independence of being entirely self-financing, with no subsidiaries from the government or other sources, which makes it questionable in and itself. The action research orientation places in between, but not in, the worlds of academia and consultancy, and its range of disciplines include anthropology, economics, organizational behavior, political science, psychoanalysis, psychiatry, and sociology. The ideology of the American Foundations was created by the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations in London in 1921. The Duke of Bedford, Marquis of Tavistock, the 11th Duke, gave a building to the Institute to study the effect of shell shock on British soldiers who survived World War I. Its purpose was to establish the breaking point of men under stress, under the direction of the British Army Bureau of Psychological Warfare, commanded by Sir John Rawlings Rees. Tavistock Institute is headquartered, of course, in London. Its prophet was Sigmund Freud, who settled in Maresfield Garden when he moved to England. He was given a mansion by Princess Bonaparte. Tavistock's pioneer work in behavioral science along Freudian lines of controlling humans established it as the world center of Foundation ideology. Its network now extends from the University of Sussex to the U.S. through the Stanford Research Institute. It also includes Esalen, MIT, Hudson Institute, Heritage Foundation, Center of Strategic and International Studies at Georgetown, where State Department personnel are trained, the U.S. Air Force Intelligence, and the Rand and Mitre corporations. The personnel of the corporations are required to undergo indoctrination at one or more of these Tavistock-controlled institutions, a network of secret groups. These groups include such things as Mont Pelerin Society, Trilateral Commission, which I've spoken of before, Ditchley Foundation, and the Club of Rome is a conduit for instructions to the Tavistock network. Tavistock Institute developed the mass brainwashing techniques which were first used experimentally on American prisoners of war in Korea. Its experiments in crowd control methods have been widely used on American public. A surreptitious but nevertheless outrageous assault on human freedom by modifying individual behavior through topical psychology. A German refugee, Kurt Willen, became director of Tavistock in 1932. He came to the U.S. in 1933 as a refugee, the first of many infiltrators, and set up the Harvard Psychology Clinic, which originated the propaganda campaign to turn the American public against Germany and involve us in World War II. In 1938, Roosevelt executed a secret agreement with Churchill, which in effect ceded U.S. sovereignty to England because it agreed to let Special Operations Executive control U.S. policies. To implement the agreement, Roosevelt sent General Donovan to London for indoctrination before setting up OSS, now called the CIA. Tavistock Institute originated the mass civilian bombing raids carried out by Roosevelt and Churchill purely as a clinical experiment in mass terror, keeping records of the results as they watched the guinea pigs reacting under controlled laboratory conditions. All Tavistock and American Foundation techniques have a single goal: to break down the psychological strength of the individual and render him helpless to oppose the dictators of the New World Order. Any technique which helps to break down the family unit, I should say, the family in calculated principles of religion, honor, patriotism, sexual behavior. These were all used by Tavistock scientists as weapons in crowd control. The methods of Freudian psychotherapy induce permanent mental illness in those who undergo the treatment by destabilizing their character. This is known in many circles here in the Americas. When you go to basic training, they will often show you war films where they show you people being blown up and so forth. Many video games today also give us the same principle of being able to view, oh yeah, look at his brain explode. We're used to that. And it takes away from our inner sense of balance, our various principles, religion, honor, patriotism, sexual behavior, and so forth, which is an animal state of mind. The victim is then advised to establish new rituals of personal interaction, that is, to indulge in brief sexual encounters, which actually set the participants adrift with no stable personal relationships in their lives, destroying their ability to establish and maintain family, friends, etc. Tavistock Institute has developed such powers in the U.S. that no one achieves prominence in any field unless he's been trained in behavioral science of the Tavistock kind. Henry Kissinger, whose meteoric rise to power is otherwise inexplicable, was a German refugee and a student of Sir John Rawlings Rees at CHAEF. Dr. Peter Bourne, a Tavistock Institute psychologist, picked Jimmy Carter for president of the U.S. solely because Carter had undergone an intensive brainwashing program administered by Admiral Hyman Rickover of Annapolis. The experiment in compulsory racial integration in the U.S. was organized by Ronald Lippert of the OSS and the American Jewish Congress and Director of Child Training in the Commission on Community Relations. The program was designed to break down the individual's sense of personal knowledge in his identity, his racial heritage, and this was all administered through the Stanford Research Institute, Tavistock, and the National Education Association. A single common denominator identifies the common Tavistock strategy. It uses drugs, the infamous MK-Ultra program of the CIA, in which unsuspecting CIA officials were given LSD and their reactions studied like guinea pigs, resulted in several deaths, in fact, and the U.S. government had to pay millions in damages to families of the victims, but the culprits were never indicted. The program originated when Sardoz AG, a Swiss drug firm owned by S.G. Warburg Company of London, developed lysergic acid. Roosevelt's advisor, James Paul Warburg, son of Paul Warburg, who wrote the Federal Reserve Act, and nephew of Max Warburg, who was a financial Hitler, or who financed Hitler, might as well have been, set up the Institute for Policy Studies to promote the drug. The result was the LSD counterculture in the 1960s and the student revolution which was financed by $25 million in CIA funds. One part of the MKUltra was the Human Ecology Fund. The CIA also paid Herbert Kellman of Harvard to carry out further experiments on mind control. In the 1950s, the CIA financed extensive LSD experiments in Canada. Dr. D. Ewan Cameron, president of the Canadian Psychological Association and director of the Royal Victorian Hospital in Montreal, received large payments from the CIA to give 53 patients large doses of LSD to record their reactions. The patients were drugged into weeks of sleep and then given electric shock treatments. One victim, the wife of a member of Canadian Parliament, is now suing the U.S. companies who provided the drug to the CIA. All the records of the CIA's drug testing program were ordered destroyed by the head of MKUltra. Because all the efforts of the Tavistock Institute are directed towards producing cyclical collapse, the effort of the CIA programs are tragically apparent. In the legacy of the Warburgs and the CIA, their principal agency, the Institute for Policy Studies, was funded by James Paul Warburg. Its co-founder was Marcus Raskin, protege of McGeorge Bundy, president of the Ford Foundation. Bundy had Raskin appointed to the post of President Kennedy's personal representative on the National Security Council, and in 1963 funded Students for the Democratic Society, through which the CIA operated the drug culture. Today, the Tavistock Institute operates a $6 billion a year network of foundations in the U.S. It's all funded by all of it's now currently funded by U.S. taxpayer money. 10 major institutions are under its direct control, with 400 subsidiaries and 3,000 other study groups and think tanks which originate many types of programs to increase the control of the New World Order over the American people and, yes, over the people of the world. I think I will hold back on reading most of this rest of this article to you, although I don't always agree with everything that the writers say. This was all very interesting. If you'd like to read an interesting book on it and make your own decision, there is a book called The Conspirators' Hierarchy, The Story of the Committee of 300 by a man by the name of Dr. John Coleman. I still say that the best starting point, by the way, is the book I offer for free, though, available on my website, All Xcast. It's called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. It's a very quick read, called a bathroom book because it's easy to read. But it gives you a basic idea and understanding. And pretty much it's all the same stuff that Alex Jones would give you. In fact, he often credits this book with being the first book that got him into understanding what was going on. And so, hey, why don't we go back to the source? There's a lot of preachers out there, but everybody's got to have a Bible. This is a good one for what's going on today. It also explains why, in this book, so many of us are called conspiracy theorists, and how that word became an evil word. Conspiracy theorist, to me, by the way, is not somebody who is evil. Somebody who questions. Somebody who takes stock in themselves and says, you know what, I don't understand all the answers. I'm going to find the answers. I'm going to do it somehow. How can I do this? What can I do to change the world by finding the answers? Now, what we do as these conspiracy theorists is we become, well, I guess you could use the term information warfare. No, not InfoWars. Interesting that they use that term on Infowars.com. But information warfare is what we do right now. It's the best thing we can do at the moment. It's passing on pertinent information of what's going on. Not necessarily trying to freak everybody out, but giving people understanding of the alternative thinking of what's really going on in the world. The Internet's a great place for that because at least you can take a look around and explore all the different possibilities. You can see the right, you can see the left, you can see the crazies, the tinfoil hatters, you can see the scientists. You can look at them all in one convenient location, just sitting in your chair. I think it's a pretty good thing to have, personally, as a study place where you can look at it all. But you have to be careful what you judge and who you listen to and what sources you pull things from. Even when I share things, take it with a grain of salt. Use the information. Use the names. Go explore yourself. Not just because I say it or read it here or whatever, but because you care enough to look of various mind control techniques to control the person to think they're going to win money. from the person standing in front to the very machines that are shown when you walk past a joint and you look at, that's what they call themselves, isn't that wonderful? And they look past this, at the front of these places, and you'll see machines sometimes right inside the door. Those are usually pretty good machines. Now, not so much that they'll make big payoffs. They're not really geared to make big payoffs. They're geared to make lots of payoffs. So the person still ends up putting the money back in. But the idea is it's a flow. Every once in a while, of course, there'll always be the big payoff, and they are generally some of the most played machines, so we've got to give it that as well. Inside, you'll find lots and lots of various messages around. If you walk around a casino, you'll see there's all sorts of messages and signs. But if you try to find the front door, you're going to have some problems because they're also geared to lose you inside of them. So that you get lost in among all these messages, and the front door isn't always as evident as it might be as you came in the door. Again, another rule among the casino industry is keep them in the house. It's this and other methodologies such as this that are used quite a bit to control you and I, to get us to think the way they want us to think. Who are they? Well, I guess I'll leave that up to you. A lot of people say it's a boogeyman or the NWO or whatever. However you want to see that boogeyman, I suppose. But there is a boogeyman. There are boogie people, and they want to boogie down on you. We'll take a quick break. We'll get back. We'll talk some more. Let's see, what will I play while I go get something to drink here? Let me look through for yourself. People in today's world are so damn lazy. I admit, even I can get lazy sometimes, you know. Trying to understand everything that's going on around us. My goodness, look at all the stuff that's happening. Just craziness. One minute you think everything's, oh my God, we're okay, we're stabilized, and then another thing destabilizes us. Another war. America's now in 3 wars. Yes, we're on 3 fronts. We now not only have Iraq and Afghanistan, but we've added Libya to the list. Oh, good. 3 wars. That's always helpful. I think of that 3 World Wars letter, in fact, supposedly written by Albert Pike. You can go look it up if you like, the Albert Pike letter. It's questionable, but still, it was written long enough ago that it seems oddly like a piece of prophecy in a sense. And you can go judge that yourself. So in fact, a good place to explore it is a place called 3worldwars.com. You have to spell it all out, 3worldwars.com. And you can take a look at that and see what's been written. Myself, I enjoy all the oddities and strange things. Right now I'm working on a project that's a little out there. I've become fascinated by Elenin, mostly because I've never flown through the tail of a comet before, and in my life, I don't know if any of you have. I don't suspect you have, since I haven't done it before. But I'm trying to study that to see what the effects are, because we are literally, I guess, for 3 days going to fly through the tail of a comet. What effect will this have on the Earth? I'm trying to look into that and judge it and figure it out. I'm working on a video right now, just of my findings. Nothing, and I'm certainly not saying it's the end of the world, but I still would like to know, if it is the end of the world, is it coming, what's going to happen, and what is this Elenin thing? Very interesting as I've explored this and looked into it, see what that's all about. But that's just another thing. People who say, fear, should we live in fear? No. I hate fear. I don't know about you, but fear is the opposite of me to faith. I have faith in my future, even if this planet got hit by 1 billion stones and everything and just, whatever, I still believe that there's something more to all this. Something that, no matter what your religious belief, no matter what you think, there's something more. I don't know, just feel it inside, right? Don't you? Something more to all this. I'll leave that up to each one of you to explore what that means. I mean, certainly for some that might be a religious belief. For some that might be just a belief that we've, that there's more to know about science. We've got this whole area of quantum physics to account for. So what if people want to argue evolution versus creationism, whatever? I say there's got to be a starting point somewhere. What happened? What created the starting point? Something came out of nothing. Was it an entity or was it just an explosion? I mean, whatever it was, I'm glad it happened because I wouldn't be here otherwise, would you? What is going to happen in our world? That is fascinating to me to look at. I've probably been spending more time looking ahead at Elenin than I've spent looking at this whole nuclear charade. Now, I say charade because, I mean, obviously if it was as important as they made it there for a while, they'd still certainly be showing more of it on the news, don't you think? I don't know. Sometimes what they don't show you is the thing you should be looking at. I know here in the Americas right now, they moved away from that, and they started looking at this whole Libyan conflict. And, again, another thing to divide us up. We're being divided. Divided to be conquered. Chaos being created everywhere. Why? To bring about order, of course. Problem, reaction, solution. David Icke was right. The problem being created. Even if they didn't create it, they can use it. Again, I offer you this thought that we need a plan. If we're going to be the resistance, if we're going to be the people who overcome whatever is going to come upon us, because we all feel something's coming, we need a plan for how to get through it. Say, well, if we don't know what's coming, how do we plan? Well, part of it is to plan for the worst. It always helps set aside some water. Never hurts you. Always helps to maybe have a little extra food around. That wouldn't hurt you. Helps to think about all the, what would happen if the world, if the electricity went out everywhere. Well, not panic, not to be in fear of it, to be prepared for it. Prepare for the worst. Expect the best. I do expect the best. I expect the best out of each and every one of you. I expect the best out of myself, and that's asking a lot from me because I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I don't know about you, but I've really messed up on occasion. I still want to expect the best. I know they're controlling our minds. I know they have all that media crap out there. Television is every day pumping it. Every time you watch that thing, it's pumping you filled with ideas, and that it can be subliminal. Even listening to me, you're being pumped through certain ideas, but I hope you choose your sources and what you're willing to listen to. Think about everything that's said. Challenge it. Be a critical thinker. Don't buy the status quo answers. Don't buy the status quo ideas. Resist the temptation that people have to just go with the flow sometimes. It's okay to go with the flow a little bit as long as it's not harming anything, but the minute you start going with the flow towards a cliff, watch out for those Pied Pipers. Because Pied Pipers will give you all the right information. They will give you everything you need to hear. They'll tell you all about it. I go back for a minute to Alex. So I start off with this guy. I started watching some of this stuff. Another thing I watched that was an interesting Alex Jones thing. So I watched his original footage that made him famous. Remember what that was, his Bohemian Grove footage? And I want everybody to go back and look at that. Go back and find the original tapes of that. Look around at where Alex is standing. Do you see heads around him? Do you see people around him? Ask yourself this. Did they know he was filming? Did they know he was there? Don't you think that they knew everybody? I mean, it's such an important thing. Don't you think they should have known everybody that was present? And why was he present? Oh, he snuck in. I have a feeling that it's not that easy. I have a feeling that you got to be invited in. And I get this weird feeling that somehow that tape was exported on purpose. Because something like that could certainly make a man famous, couldn't it? And a famous man who seems to be leading in the right direction, well, 99% right, 1% error, 1% lie. I'm glad for the people Alex Jones has awakened. I've met a lot of them. I know a lot of them. I certainly don't. I encourage you guys to, as you critique him, to be, and I know it's the urge is to be silly and call him names and stuff, and that's cool, but, if that's what you want to do. But I think that the best way to deal with a guy like this is not to come at him that way, because there's a lot of people that do that, and it doesn't really get anything done, but to expose him in the sense of letting people really examine who he is. Instead of making funny, look at Alex, he's a funny monkey man type things, let's dig into this thing and really examine. Because if he is indeed a part of the problem or, a potential for being somebody who who could be leading people astray, then I think it's important that we at least examine them and know for ourselves one way or the other whether we should be listening. So again, I encourage you, listen to no man. Listen to yourself. Listen to freedom. Listen to love. Listen to brotherhood. Listen to unity of purpose. And what is that purpose? To resist tyranny and stand for freedom. To stand against anything that would form an enslavement to man. I don't care if it comes from outer space or comes across the ocean or pronounces itself king of the world. If it takes away our freedom, it's wrong. And I will fight till my dying breath against that, whatever it be. We have some strange times still coming, folks. Very odd times, and we need each other. We need to have a firm grasp on what we believe, yet we also need to open our minds up to understand that there's a lot of things that we don't know. It's okay to not know. Don't go pronouncing a date as being, remember all this stuff about, what was it, March 15th? Everybody was, there was going to be a big poll shift. It didn't happen, did it? So not every date's going to occur. I know this is, May 21st is another one. People, everybody's got a date. You know what? It's not the dates that are going to mean diddly to us. It's the signs. Start concentrating more on the signs than the dates. The dates will take care of themselves. But I'll tell you, it should be a pretty funky November this year because, like I say, we're going to go flying through the tail of a comet. So I understand it for 3 days. What's in that tail and what it has to offer us, I don't know. I'm trying to study this right now to understand it. But I get the feeling that we're all going to need each other no matter what. Whether it be war, or rumors of war, whether it be asteroids, new earthquakes in diverse places. My God, it all sounds pretty biblical, don't it? Well, go look at the philosophers, the prophets of old. Go look at the stories. Go examine time periods and see what's happened. There is a order to things. There are patterns. And if we examine those, sometimes we can see where we're going. Love you guys. I care about you, and I thank you for being here with us today. I want to remind you to be sure and do one thing, and that is this. No matter what happens, keep hope alive and be love, because that's what you are. We'll see you next week.